Hi guys, so we've got an exciting update. I know a lot of you have been asking for this, but we've just released cost groups and with that some updates to the invoicing. So I'm going to take you through cost groups and what you can now do with them. If we go down to our settings tab and data setup, you'll now be able to, along with cost categories, add your cost groups. So preliminaries, foundations, framing, we've added some cost groups here. So we'll jump back to our estimate and we'll start building out some cost groups and some categories within them. So we've now got a button here called cost group, and we'll add a group here called preliminaries. You can see if we drop that down, we can then add a cost category within this group. So we'll add some engineering, some drafting, and if we want to then create another one on the fly, we can. Let's just call this council. And now all of those categories are grouped under preliminaries. And the categories work the same as they did before in that you can still add costing items within these. So if we engineering fees, still works the same way as previous, but now they're grouped under the header preliminaries. You can drag and drop these out of there as well, so that that's now in ungrouped. And if we added another group here, say foundations, we could then drag and drop that into there. So it's quite easy to move your categories around. I'll just go through here and build a little estimate out, so then I can show you how this flows through to a proposal. So now you can see that we've built the estimate out. We've got our three groups here, preliminaries, foundations, and framing. And with each of those, we've completed our categories within each of them. So now what we want to do is look at how this can flow through to a proposal. So I'll just put some markup on the top, and that adjusts the owner price here. And if we click create proposal, it'll take us to a blank proposal document, and I'll now show you the extra options that we're now given with the grouping. So specifications are here. At the moment, this is showing the groups, now categories rather, or we can show by groups. So any specifications that were in categories under the group preliminaries, if we now group by cost groups, it will put all of those items which have got a specification ticked under that group. So it just gives you a bit of flexibility of how you want to transfer from your groups or your categories to your specification document. If we wanted to look then at our include cost groups, we can show the total price for each of the groups, but not the categories. But then if we want to show what categories there are within each of those groups, we can do that and then show the price of those categories as well. So we might not want to show the total price for each group and just show preliminaries and then the total price of each category under preliminaries. There's a lot more flexibility now in the documents to show how you want to process that information. So we've made an update to the invoicing. You'll now see that there's only two options for job type to convert to now, and that is fixed price and cost plus. We no longer have percentage complete. And the reason for that is we've made the invoicing interface a little bit more flexible so that you can choose to claim a percentage of the job, or you might want to choose to claim percentages of your categories or your groups. It's much more flexible. So I'm going to show you how that works now. So if we click create job, we'll choose fixed price, and we want to copy over the $0 items from the budget. You can choose to now enable retention or not. I'm not going to do that for now. And we'll put in our address here. So we're going to put in 12 fixed price. And now we're going to create the job. So now we've got the job created. We can see here it's got the invoice method is fixed price. You can choose after creating the job by hitting that little pencil icon to enable the retention if you haven't created any invoices yet. So you still have that opportunity post then. So if we now go to the job financials tab and navigate to the budget, you'll see that in our estimate, we don't actually have the groups come over here. So if we go jump back to our estimate and costings, if we had timber supply in framing and timber supply in preliminaries, when we turn it into a job, it will convert any items from that category and put them all under one category so you don't have it as messy. So it will organize all the items under the individual categories once you convert it to a job. Now, if we look at client invoices, you can see here we've still got the same interface. We can add a client invoice, and we've had some updates here on the client invoice. So we can still enter the title, so claim 1 footings. And we've added a little tab here so that you can set the client on the job if you haven't already done that. So if we select here, Daniel Morton as the client, and we can see that it's telling us we've got a missing zero contact. So it's now going to let us edit that zero contact within this interface without having to navigate back to the details page. So we'll create a new contact here called Daniel Mortons and save that. So you don't have to navigate away from that invoice. Now, as we go down here, you can see we've got invoice items, and we can claim a percentage of the whole job as we did before. So say we want to do a 15% claim, That's giving us 15% of that contract total. But let's say you had an architect on the job and they wanted a more broken down claim per category or per group. What you can do here is by navigating and clicking this little drop down or anywhere on this tab, it'll drop this down to show the groups. So let's say we wanted to claim 20% of preliminaries on this invoice. We can then enter a note against that. So this is the charge for completion of working drawings. And then you might want to claim 5% of framing, say, and put a note in there, charge for framing deposit. This then allows us to create a thing called an invoice summary. So this is not the invoice itself. This is just you proposing the claim to your architect and or your client so that they can see that you're proposing to claim 20% of preliminaries and 5% of framing. So if we click invoice summary, it gives us an option whether we want to group the cost categories by groups. So that means that when we print this invoice summary, it's only going to show the groups and the totals that we're claiming against a group. Now, this is an important thing because back in your proposal, you've showed your client only the totals of your groups, not of your categories. So then when it flows through to the invoicing here, you can make sure that you are giving them the same information on the other end that you did in the proposal. So we're going to click group by cost categories and download, and I'll give you a preview of what this looks like. We've got the invoice summary here now, and we can see preliminaries being the group. The contract value was X. We haven't previously claimed anything. It's now showing what we're claiming to date and what's remaining and what's on this invoice. And it's also showing on this claim the notation that we've put against preliminaries and the notation that we've put against framing. So then that just gives you a quick way to send that claim summary to your client. Now, let's say they come back and agree with the claim and it's ready to issue. Then you can click save and send, and it will give you a copy of the invoice that gets sent across to Xero for payment, which looks the same as it previously did. So claim 1, footings. So for those of you who don't need that invoice summary, you just download the invoice, save and send it. It still works the same way, but there's just a lot more flexibility. Now, let's say when you're estimating, you showed the client or the project manager a breakdown with the cost categories, not the groups. Then what we can do here is, I'll just set these back to 0%, and we want to claim a percentage of engineering. So we want to claim 33% there, council, 22%, we go down to foundations, 22, etc. Or you can just click this arrow and it'll claim it 100%. So then we don't necessarily have to do it by groups. Save that and download that invoice summary, and we don't click group by cost categories. And download this, we can now see that all of the cost categories that were on that job that you may have shown on the proposal now show on the invoice summary. So again, a lot more flexibility on that. We've also introduced the ability to claim your variations from within the client interface here. So I'll quickly create a variation and show you how that works. We've got a variation here to claim. You can just click the little arrow here and claim 100% of all your variations, or you may want to come into this particular variation and claim 50% of it or all of it. We've got that flexibility. So now if we click Save Draft, and again, we go back up to our invoice summary, and we'll do this by cost groups, download, you'll be able to see that invoice now includes the variation. It's got all of our contracted categories and amounts up here in the summary of those claims. And then we've got our variations below showing the total of that approved variation, what's previously been invoiced, what you've just completed, what's remaining to invoice, and this invoice. So that's a really neat way to be able to manage that in another way. So we've also had some minor improvements to the estimating with the interface that I want to show you. The first one is the status update. So we can see if you are going to use the grouping cost groups, under preliminaries, this is red. Now under each of these categories here, we've added a new button which you can just click and it will update that category to green, and the same here. You can also click the little drop down and put it as not applicable if you're not using that. Otherwise, complete, it'll change back to there. And you can see that the group heading will only go green if all the categories within it are completed. You can also see now when you drop down, it's got the checklist here as before. Type and add your checklist items in there, and you can't click out anymore. You do have to click save and close to go into there. Also, when you drop that category down, we do have the little checklist button here as well to be able to access that now. Reorder items. So if you're in your category here and you want to reorder how the items work, you can click reorder items now, reorder those, and then click reorder done. We also now have a feature on specifications. You can click reset specification orders, and then that will match that to how the items are ordered on the costings. Thanks for listening. Hopefully these updates make your life easier.